So what I realize now, this is all happening from hindsight, because the only thing that I was feeling for those 4 years of my married life was that I didn't have control. But I wanted it still. I still thought I had to have it. So the very first step of the 10 steps to process grief. The first one is actually coming to accept you don't have control. And that's a hard battle to face, guys. That's a really hard battle to fully embrace and go with, is that it's not just that you finally come to realize you don't have control, but that you accept that no matter the work you do, it's outside of your control. And then the second step is what I just mentioned. And that second step is to accept that there still is hope. And so the second one is accept that there still is hope. And that means that even though things don't always go the way that you thought they would, or you hoped they would, or you expected they would, that there are still moments of good things. And so, I'm not going to say that you have to hold on to them and that they define your relationship, because they don't. And I'm not going to tell you that you always have to search for them, because sometimes searching for them hurts. And it hurts too much to try and think of the good stuff. But it is important to accept that there is hope and there still are good things. Mind you, I am speaking this from a very specific place, as the spouse of someone who is facing depression and anxiety. But these steps, all of these steps that I'm going to teach you, are so important for anybody, for whatever life stage you are. If you've just lost a loved one, then accepting that you don't have control, that they're gone, and accepting that good moments still might happen, there might still be rays of sunshine, are so important. Just yesterday actually, I watched some documentaries about primordial dwarfism. I think it's MOPD type 2 is the scientific name for it. But it is for people who are born that they're in proportion, but they're just smaller. And there's what I was watching said there's only 150 in the world, and you don't really know what's going on until they're probably about a year old, and they're still the size of most newborns. And as I was watching these documentaries about the families as they came to grips with these things, as they try and support their children that face this, a lot of them talked about the fear. Because one of the medical side effects or issues with this reality for them is aneurysm. They could die at any time because of an aneurysm. And to realize that your children could die at any moment and there is nothing you can do really hit my heart. To realize that no matter what your situation in life, everybody is facing this uncertainty and is facing this lack of guarantee. No one has guarantees. And so how they learn to focus is to support each other, and these families rally and they come to conferences together to support each other, because they need to know that they're not alone, and that everybody is facing this, and to gain support from one another. And that's coming in some later steps. But I want to make that point, that the things that I'm sharing are for everyone. I come from my specific place because it's my specific place. But whether it's if it's loss of expectation, if it is a death, if it is things not going the way that you hoped, these things all help. And so for them, they accept that there still is hope, that they get up every morning and they love their kids and they give their kids opportunities. And when the hard times come, they face it. And when the good times come, they face it. And so for me, I got to learn that whether it was exactly what I wanted or it was nothing like I wanted, that both would come. I didn't have control, but good things still happened, and to embrace those good things. Because after 3 years of the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows, I reached a point where I could no longer accept that there still was hope. I was frustrated because I had watched this cycle through so many times and so many times and so many times that I was frustrated and I was angry and I was mad and confused and a whole slew of things that things hadn't gone, weren't getting better. It wasn't a lasting progress. It was just this circle. and so I lost the fact that there was hope, because we had good times during those days. My husband would laugh and share and was in pathways and good things were happening, but I couldn't see it because I was so trapped in my anger and I was so trapped in frustration that it was never changing. And I didn't realize at the time, but I've only realized later, that my expecting the worst, my being angry, only tainted the good times and made the bad times even harder, because I didn't have any bounce back. Because I wasn't allowing that there was still hope, I had nothing to bounce back to. I had nothing to rejuvenate me, to give me hope. And so this first step, and I'm not saying force yourself. That's the thing that I wrote on the other paper, is it's not about forcing yourself to be happy. Accepting there is still hope is not forcing yourself, well, I have to just muscle through and be happy about it, or I have to count my blessings, or I have to feel a certain way. You don't. In no way do you have to do that. This is just accepting that the whole world is not dark. And this leads me to step number 3, which is that you choose trust. And when I say choose trust, it's sort of this idea that you accept that there's still hope. Choosing trust is that there was a purpose for all of this. Mind you, I hated it when people would try and tell me that when I was in the middle of it, because it hurt that people just told me to ignore whatever I was feeling, and it hurt that people were just telling me that it would just all be better, and I just needed to just choose hope and know that Heavenly Father knew exactly what he was doing. Knowing he hadn't abandoned me and knowing that he knew exactly what he was doing was not helpful when I was kicking and screaming on the inside. So if you were someone on the outside of this, supporting someone, please don't force. Please don't tell them to count their blessings. Please don't tell them that it'll all be better, because that's not what I needed to hear. When I was in the middle of it, I just needed to hear that where I was coming from and what was happening, it was okay that I was struggling. I needed to hear that it was okay that I didn't have control, and it was okay that I was struggling not having control, because I was a 25-year-old who thought that I could control stuff. So if you're supporting someone from the outside, don't force these steps on anyone. Just listen. All that anybody needs in a hard time is for you to hold space for them. And that means that you go, wow, that must be hard. And then you let them go wherever that is. Because once you can let that pain out, once you can set it over here on this other place so it's not eating you up on the inside, then you can do this stuff. So I think the actual very first, 0 step is to feel. Let yourself feel. And when you choose to trust, you choose to trust that what you're feeling is okay. And that you're not a bad person because of it. You're not an evil, horrible person because it hurts. You're just human. And right now in this moment, it hurts. So I hope that you'll let yourself feel that when you are choosing, when you choose to trust, that means that you are simply choosing to trust yourself, that you're not a mean, awful, negative, bad person, that you're not doomed because you feel this way. No, you are having a very human moment, and that human moment hurts, and it will indeed be okay. So this choosing to feel whatever you feel, choosing to trust that you're not awful for it, leads us to step number 4. And this is actually a very, very important step. And this step is fearless inventory of yourself. And you're like, huh? So fearless inventory of yourself means that you actually figure out why you're feeling what you're feeling. I struggled with this one a lot because I was afraid that my anger at God, my anger at my spouse, my anger at my family made me a bad person. There was a really dark moment for me a little while ago. Well, it's in the years category now, but when I was alone at my house and I did not know what tomorrow would bring. I had no clue. And I sat on my couch crying out to God, asking him why he hadn't fixed this already. And I felt like I didn't have anyone to reach out to because they would want to do things on their terms. And I didn't even know what my terms were. I just knew that I was angry and I was numb. My body couldn't handle any more fear. I couldn't go anywhere else, and I didn't know what to do. And instead of taking that fearless inventory of myself and actually diving into why I was mad at God, why I was mad at my spouse, why I was mad at my family, I just stuffed it as deep and dark and like separate from myself as I possibly could, because I didn't want to be a bad person. And I felt like only bad people felt what I was feeling. And that was very scary to me. And I held on to that for a long time. I went to counseling for that, and still it didn't make a difference. There was one day though where I was going to a training, and at this training, she stood up at the front of the room and she said, "A lot of you are carrying a lot of heavy things into this room. And a lot of you are feeling worn down and broken. So before we continue, I encourage all of you to close your eyes and envision yourself driving to this event, and with all of your baggage and all the stuff that you're carrying around with you." And she said that I want you to step out of that vehicle, and I want you to envision a circle on the ground, like this chalk circle on the ground, and you're going to step into that circle. And inside this circle, I want you to start peeling off and taking off all of your junk and all of the things that have hurt you and all of the things that have broken your heart. And I want you to leave them in that circle. And that was the first time ever that in almost a decade, notice almost a decade, where I actually looked at what I was carrying around. I looked at the anger of being sent home from my mission early. I looked at the frustration that I felt at being engaged for so long. I looked at the heartbreak of every time that cycle hit its lowest point. I looked at all the times when I sat in church alone and I was sad. And I finally saw each one of those things for what they were. things that were baggage, things that had bruised, things that had hurt, but not things that were me. They weren't deep at my core. They were just stuff that had been piled on the outside. So I slowly peeled them all off, and I took them off of me and I put them in this circle on the ground. And then she said, and now I want you to envision a ray of light from the sun being magnified by a magnifying glass that just bursts all the stuff into your circle into flames. And so that for me was learning to let go. First, I had to know what was there, and then I allowed myself to let go. Because once I finally knew what I was facing, once I finally realized that the stuff that I was facing wasn't defining me, it just was burying me, then I was able to take it off and realize that I didn't have to be afraid of it anymore. I didn't have to keep carrying it anymore. So take that fearless inventory of yourself, and then I invite you to envision the circle on the ground and take it off and leave it there. Because once you know what's there, once you set the parameters of what you're dealing with, you don't have to keep carrying it with you. So prepare to let it go and leave it in that circle, and you can see heavenly flame if you want. Like in the story of Elijah, when he prays and the prophets of Baal, they're both trying to burn a sacrifice, and he burns and this fire comes from heaven and burns everything on the altar and all the water and everything. Maybe that's what you do. Put all of your feelings on this altar and leave them there. And then step back and ask that the atonement is used for you to burn away that darkness, to burn away that pain and that hurt until you look down at the ground and there's nothing left. There's not even ashes. This fire was so all-consuming, it was so powerful that even the chalk mark you burned on the ground is gone. There is no mark of what you used to carry still there. Does that mean that you are automatically healed? No. But does it mean that you can approach the healing process lighter? Yes. So these steps happen generally for anger for me. And I go through them. When you read about the 5 steps of grief, the 5 processes of grief, they're like, they don't always happen in any particular order, and they don't always, once you go through them doesn't mean that it's never going to come again. These come again and come often. Before I went down this road, I was talking about General Conference, and I was sitting watching to General Conference, and they were talking about that you can have a hard time and still have joy, and that good things are coming. You just need to keep moving forward. And I was angry. I was right back in that stage of grief of anger, because though the dark times are hard, the time when you can sit in the room with someone and have them completely ignore you for 12 hours hurts. To live in a home where someone is so much stuck in their own fear and their own anxiety that they don't believe you when you tell them you love them. And because they don't believe that, they can't even tell you back that they love you. Because they live in fear that you really don't love them, and that you think that they're a burden, and that they know that life with them is not what you expected. And they live in fear of that every day, that you're going to walk out the door. To face that, and that when stress comes up, what you think is normal stress that anybody else can handle, but that you and your spouse are having a hard time handling because one withdraws and one gets angry. That's the stuff that really hurts. The low lows are scary, but the slightly below are what hurts, because you feel like you do it alone. And you're afraid you forget this, except there's still hope, because you don't see a break. You don't see a bend in the road. You don't see a change, and you don't know how to see a change, because you've tried all the things and you've done all the stuff, and still it's not different. And so then you go back up and you accept that there is still hope, and you choose to trust, and you take an inventory of what it is that hurts and why it hurts, and then you let it go again. And you just do that cycle again and again, however many times that you need to. And I was in that space a few weeks ago. I was angry again. I was frustrated again. And I couldn't feel what they were telling me, because I couldn't see it. And instead of forcing myself to just accept what they said, instead of forcing myself that I was just going to be happy, I sat with the anger for a while, and I allowed myself to just let it be, and then I shared it with someone. So that's the next step, guys. You prepare to let go, and then you accept you don't have control, because the thing that came to me in that moment was life was going to keep being life. There are things that improve our situation. There are things that make it better. But I don't know as right now if it will ever fully go away. But I realized I could keep being angry and removing myself from God. I could keep being angry at the way things were and stay in that place of being miserable and being alone. Or I could choose that I didn't even have to say that Heavenly Father knew what he was doing. I didn't have to say that this was happening for a reason. All that I needed to do is say, I choose the peace of knowing I'm close to you, instead of the misery of feeling alone. And I accepted that I didn't have control, and I accepted that nothing I would do would change it, but I could choose to have peace in my lack of control. I could choose to have hope that at least I was heading in a direction, that I wasn't just sitting and stuck in pain, but that I could choose to let things go and move forward. So accept you don't have control, and accept that that's okay. That it isn't about control, but it is really nice to not be alone. You accept there's still hope. You choose to trust that at least you're heading in a direction. You take fearless inventory of yourself and what you're feeling, and you allow yourself to feel it. And then you prepare to let it go. You put it in that circle on the ground. You put that on your rock in Gethsemane. You put it somewhere and know you don't have to carry it anymore.